The acidic air of Kara Station bit at Vin Carrick's lungs as he made his way through the crowded corridors. 58 years of military service had hardened him to such discomforts, but the prosthetic leg still bothered him on days when the station's gravity fluctuated. Today was one of those days. The artificial gravity generators were failing, just like everything else on this godforsaken outpost. Vin's silver crew-cut hair and weathered face drew little attention among the diverse crowd. In the fringe sectors, retired military personnel were as common as the dust that clung to everyone's boots. His Marine Corps insignia, however, earned him a wider berth than most received. Even here at the edge of civilized space, the reputation of Earth Marines preceded them. The auction hall loomed ahead, its entrance marked by holographic advertisements promising exotic treasures from uncharted worlds. Vin checked his wrist console, confirming the small balance in his account. His modest pension didn't allow for extravagant purchases, but occasionally he bid on rare specimens, not out of any particular desire to own them, but to maintain his cover as a casual collector. It gave him access to these auctions without raising suspicions. In truth, Vin came to observe to document. The data crystal he carried in his breast pocket held the research of Dr. Elena Solaris, a xenobiologist who had spent her life studying the intersection of sentience and cultural heritage across species. Before her death, she had entrusted him with continuing her work, identifying sentient beings illegally trafficked as exotic commodities. The hall was already packed when he arrived, the air thick with the mingled scents of dozens of species. Vin found an inconspicuous position against the back wall, where his height afforded him a clear view of the auction platform. He activated the subtle recording device embedded in his ocular implant, another souvenir from his final mission on Vega. Vega. The name alone conjured images he'd spent years trying to forget. Blood-soaked soil, children's cries, the copper-sweet scent that had filled his nostrils as his unit arrived too late to prevent the massacre. Too late to save anyone except himself, dragged half-dead from the burning settlement. Vin swallowed hard, pushing the memories back into their compartment. Focus on the present. Document. Report. That was his purpose now. The first lots were unremarkable mineral samples from gas giant's flora, with medicinal properties fossilized remains of extinct species. Vin recorded each sale dispassionately, noting prices and buyers for his regular report to the Galactic Council's Sentient Rights Division. It was bureaucratic work, but necessary. Somewhere in the endless stream of data patterns emerged that could help identify trafficking networks. Hours passed. The crowd thinned as the premium lots were sold. Vin remained his weathered face, betraying no emotion. His patience was rewarded when the auctioneer, a gaunt Rigelian with six-fingered hands, announced the final lot with particular enthusiasm. Ladies, gentlemen, and distinguished entities of all designations. The auctioneer's voice boomed through the hall. Our final offering today is one of exceptional rarity and beauty. Harvested from the outer reaches of the Cygnus Arm, in a protected zone recently opened for resource extraction, I present to you 8 juvenile specimens of Draconius minimus. A ripple of excitement passed through the remaining bidders as a hovering platform floated onto the stage. It contained a transparent enclosure, inside which huddled small reptilian creatures with iridescent blue scales. Each was roughly the size of Vin's forearm, with delicate wing membranes folded against their bodies. Vin straightened his interest, genuinely piqued. Such specimens were indeed rare, but something about them struck him as unusual. He zoomed his ocular implant for a closer look. The creatures were arranged not in random positions of captivity, but in a distinct formation. As he watched, they shifted, maintaining precise distances from one another. When the auctioneer tapped the enclosure, they moved in perfect synchronization, like a military unit responding to a threat. Then came the sound. At first, Vin thought it was feedback from the auction hall sound system, a high-pitched trilling that sent needles dragging across his eardrums. His hand instinctively moved to his auditory compensator, a device installed after a sonic grenade had damaged his hearing during the Vega campaign. But as he adjusted the frequencies, the trilling transformed. Patterns emerged. Modulations. Rhythms too complex to be random noise. The realization hit him like a physical blow. They were communicating. Vin had seen something similar once before in Dr. Solaris's research, a species that communicated through harmonics, encoding complex information in sound waves. A sentient species. These weren't specimens, they were children. The auctioneer was already taking bids. Starting at 50,000 credits. Do I hear 60-60 from the gentleman from Alpha Centauri? 70-70 from the corporate representative. 80. Vin's heartbeat accelerated his combat reflexes, flooding his system with adrenaline. Every instinct told him to stay silent, to document and report through proper channels. It was what he always did. But something, perhaps the memory of those other children, the ones he'd failed to save on Vega, propelled him forward. Point of order. His voice cut through the bidding military command presence, silencing the crowd. I challenge the categorization of this lot under Section 17 of the Galactic Council Charter. The auctioneer's expression shifted from surprise to annoyance. The gentleman is out of order. Bidding will continue at 80,000. Section 17. Vin repeated louder this time. Cultural sanctuary clause for sentient species. These are not specimens. They are displaying clear signs of sentient communication. His words created an immediate stir. The corporate bidders exchanged concerned glances. Legal challenges could delay acquisition for months, sometimes years. The auctioneer's face darkened. Sir, unless you have documentation to support such an extraordinary claim, I must ask you to— I do. Vin withdrew the data crystal from his pocket. It pulsed with a soft blue light, identical to the hue of the dragonling's scales. The research of Dr. Elena Solaris, foremost xenobiological authority on sentient classification. I submit it for review, as is my right under Galactic Council provisions. The next 3 hours were a blur of bureaucratic wrangling. Station security was called. Records were verified. Vin's military credentials and cultural preservation officer designation were examined and reluctantly acknowledged. The data crystal was scanned for authenticity. All the while, the dragonlings continued their harmonic communications, the patterns growing more complex, as if they sensed the proceedings would determine their fate. When the station administrator finally arrived, an overweight human with the perpetually harried look of minor officials, everywhere Vin had already prepared his case. These beings fall under protected status, he stated firmly. Their communication patterns match those documented by Dr. Solaris on 3 other worlds, where Draconia species were confirmed sentient. Under the Charter, they cannot be sold. The administrator glanced nervously at the corporate representatives. The station operates under multiple jurisdictions, Major Carrick. The Resource Management Act of 2387 grants certain exemptions. The Charter supersedes the Act, Vin countered. As you well know. Or shall I request a direct ruling from the Council? The threat hung in the air. Direct Council involvement would mean inspections, reviews of all auction records, possible sanctions. For a struggling operation like Kara Station, it could mean bankruptcy. Very well, the administrator conceded, after a lengthy silence. The lot is withdrawn pending classification review. But the specimen's beings must remain in a secure environment. Our facilities are not equipped. I'll take custody, Vin said quickly. My quarters meet xenobiological containment standards. It was a half-truth. His quarters met military standards for emergency xenocontainment, but were hardly ideal for long-term care. Still, they were better than the station's holding cells. The administrator hesitated, then nodded. Temporary custody, only pending official classification. You'll be responsible for their welfare. As station security prepared to transfer the enclosure, the corporate representative, a sleek woman in an immaculate suit, approached Vin. This is a mistake, she said quietly. "Those creatures are worth a fortune to the right buyers. I could arrange a finder's fee, 20%. Vin stared at her, his expression hardening. "I've seen what happens when we put a price on sentient life." The memory of Vega flashed again, bodies arranged in precise rows, for processing labeled by genetic potential rather than names. The copper-sweet scent that had turned his stomach. "Your loss," the woman shrugged, but her eyes were cold. "You should know my employers don't appreciate interference." "Neither do I," Vin replied, turning away to follow the security team. The station's corridors seemed even more cramped with the hovering enclosure floating ahead of him. By the time they reached his quarters in the residential section, a small crowd of curious onlookers had gathered. Security dispersed them efficiently before departing, leaving Vin alone with his new charges. The dragonlings had gone silent during the transfer, huddled together in the center of their enclosure. Their wing membranes pulsed with faint bioluminescence patterns, shifting across the translucent surface like data streams. Vin approached slowly, crouching to their eye level. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said, knowing they couldn't understand his words, but hoping his tone might convey his intent. The creatures watched him, with multifaceted eyes unblinking. Then, hesitantly, the largest among them, distinguished by a crest of deeper blue scales, moved forward. It tilted its head, examining Vin with what seemed like curiosity, and emitted a complex series of trills. Vin's auditory compensator translated the sound into visual patterns on his wrist console. Not words exactly, but definitely structured communication. He would need to modify the translation protocols to better interpret their language. First, though, they needed proper accommodations. The enclosure was far too small for 8 growing beings. According to Solaris's notes, dragonlings required a mineral bath for proper-scale health atmospheric mixtures, richer in nitrogen than human standard, and slightly higher gravity than Earth normal. Vin spent the next several hours converting his sparse living space. He disassembled his rarely used relaxation chamber to create a shallow pool requisitioned mineral compounds from the station's agricultural section and adjusted his quarters' environmental controls to the dragonlings' needs. When all was ready, he carefully opened the enclosure. The dragonlings didn't rush out. Instead, they emerged one by one, led by the crested individual. They explored their new environment with methodical precision, testing the mineral bath, investigating the food Vin had prepared, according to Solaris's recommendations, and examining every corner of the room. Occasionally, they would emit trills to each other, clearly sharing information. Vin recorded these exchanges, feeding them into his compensator's learning algorithm. It would take time to develop even a rudimentary translation, but already he could discern emotional overtones, caution, curiosity, and something that might have been relief. As night cycle approached, the dragonlings arranged themselves in a circular formation in the mineral bath wing, membranes overlapping. The patterns of light across those membranes synchronized, forming complex, shifting geometries. Watching them, Vin felt a strange peace settle over him, the first he'd known since Vega. He fell asleep in his chair, lulled by the gentle harmonics of their communication. The next morning brought a priority message from the station administrator. The classification review was being expedited at the request of the Galactic Corporate Authority. Representatives would arrive within 48 hours to conduct their own assessment. Vin knew what that meant. The GCA, notorious for its flexible interpretation of sentient rights provisions, would find a way to classify the dragonlings as non-sentient, regardless of evidence. They would be seized, dissected, their unique biology exploited for corporate gain. "Not this time," Vin murmured, turning to where the dragonlings were emerging from their morning torpor. "I won't fail again." He activated his secure communication channel, prepared to contact his handler at the Sentient Rights Division, only to discover that outgoing transmissions had been restricted for technical maintenance. The station was isolating him, probably at corporate request. He needed another approach. The data crystal Solaris's lifework might contain more than just research. The xenobiologist had been notoriously paranoid about corporate espionage, encrypting her most valuable findings. Vin connected the crystal to his military-grade neural interface, bypassing the standard access protocols. Immediately, his vision filled with a dense cloud of data points, star charts, genetic codes, harmonic patterns, and encrypted communication frequencies. One file stood out, a video recording labeled First Contact Protocol Draconius Communicative Interface. The recording showed Dr. Solaris with a mature Draconius specimen. She was demonstrating a device that interpreted the creature's harmonic language and converted human speech into corresponding tones. According to her notes, the device had been deemed too sensitive for commercial development, the technology sealed under Council directive. But the design specifications were there, embedded in the crystal. Vin worked through the night modifying his auditory compensator to follow Solaris's specifications. By morning, he had a crude but functional translation device. He approached the dragonlings who were engaged in their morning communication ritual. "I am Vin," he said, the compensator converting his words into a series of harmonic tones. "I want to help you." The dragonlings fell silent, their multifaceted eyes fixed on him. Then slowly, the crested leader trilled a response. The compensator translated, "We are the Guardians. Why do you keep us from the song?" Vin frowned. "What song?" "The endless song. The memory thread of our ancestors. We must join it before the changing of the moons, or the pattern will be broken." Vin wasn't sure he understood, but it was clear the dragonlings had a cultural imperative, perhaps a coming-of-age ritual, that their captivity had interrupted. "I want to help you return to your home," he said. "But others wish to claim you as property. We must prove you are sentient beings with rights under galactic law." The leader's wing membranes flashed with patterns too quick for Vin's compensator to translate. After a moment of what seemed like internal consultation with the others, it responded, "We will show you the song. It contains all proof." The dragonlings arranged themselves in formation, wing membranes extended and overlapping. As one, they began to trill their voices, blending into a complex harmony that seemed to shift and flow like liquid mathematics. Vin's compensator struggled to process the information density, but fragments came through star maps, genetic codes, historical records encoded in sound. It was beyond mere communication. It was an entire cultural archive, passed down through generations. "The song is our history," the leader explained when they finished. "It tells of the time before, when our kind flew among the stars, as guardians of the balance. It tells of the great silencing, when the others came and took our ancestors for study. It tells of the survivors hiding their young in sacred places among the worlds." Vin felt a chill run through him. "The others, they took your kind for experimentation, to understand our song, to take it for themselves. They believed it held the key to universal translation, to controlling the networks that bind stars together." The implications staggered Vin. If the dragonlings' harmonic language could interface with communication networks, control interstellar data flows, no wonder corporations would pay fortunes for them. "The corporate representatives arrive tomorrow," Vin said. "They will try to claim you aren't sentient. We need to broadcast your song to the Council as proof." The leader's wing patterns shifted to a deep indigo. "The station blocks your transmissions. The song cannot reach the distant stars from here." "There must be a way," Vin insisted. "What about the station's comm arrays? Could your song interface with them directly?" The dragonlings conferred in rapid harmonics too complex for the compensator to translate. Finally, the leader responded, "Yes, if we could reach the primary array, the song would flow through all channels then." A plan began to form in Vin's mind. Risky, probably illegal, but their only chance. "I'll get you there. Be ready when I return." The station's communication center was restricted, but Vin's military credentials still granted him access to most areas. He spent the day reconnoitering, identifying security protocols and shift changes, plotting a path that would avoid the busiest corridors. When he returned to his quarters, he found the dragonlings in an agitated state, wing membranes flashing with rapid patterns. They come, the leader trilled as soon as he entered. We sense their minds, cold, calculating. They do not see us as life. Vin checked his console. No official notification of the GCA representative's arrival had been sent. They were moving faster than expected, hoping to catch him unprepared. Change of plans, he said. We move now. He couldn't risk taking them through the station's corridors. Instead, he accessed the environmental maintenance shafts, narrow passages used by service drones to reach critical systems. His broad shoulders barely fit, and his prosthetic leg caught painfully on protruding conduits. But the dragonlings moved through with ease, their bodies perfectly adapted to the confined space. They emerged 2 levels below the communication center. From here, they would need to use regular corridors relying on timing and luck to avoid security. Stay close, Vin instructed the dragonlings. If we're separated, continue toward the array. I'll create a distraction if necessary. The station's night cycle worked in their favor, with reduced personnel and dimmed lighting. They made it up 1 level without incident. But as they approached the final ascent, a security patrol rounded the corner ahead. Vin reacted instinctively, pushing the dragonlings behind him and straightening into an officer's bearing. "Evening, gentlemen," he said casually as the guards approached. "Major Carrick." The lead guard frowned. "You're supposed to be in your quarters. There's a station lockdown in effect." "Emergency council business," Vin replied smoothly. "Just received clearance from the administrator." The guard's hand moved subtly toward his sidearm. "Funny, because the administrator specifically ordered increased patrols around your section. Said you might try something like this." Vin assessed his options. 2 guards standard stun batons, probably comlinks to central security. He could disable them, but not without raising an alarm. Before he could decide, a harmonic trill rose from behind him. The guards' expressions went slack, their eyes unfocused. "What did you do?" Vin whispered to the dragonlings as the guards stood motionless. "Mind murmur," the leader explained. "It confuses thoughts. Temporary only. We must hurry." They slipped past the immobilized guards and continued upward. Twice more they encountered personnel, and each time the dragonlings' harmonics created a momentary confusion that allowed them to pass unhindered. At last, they reached the communication center, a vast chamber dominated by the primary array, a crystalline structure pulsing with data streams from across the galaxy. "Will this work?" Vin asked, gesturing to the array. The leader's wing membranes expanded fully, iridescent patterns flowing across them. "Yes, the song will flow through all paths." "Then sing," Vin said, moving to secure the door. "Sing for your freedom." The dragonlings arranged themselves in a perfect octagon around the array's base. As one, they inhaled deeply, their bodies expanding with the effort. Then came the sound, not the gentle trills of their earlier communications, but a full-throated harmonic cascade that seemed to penetrate Vin's very bones. The array's crystals resonated in response, their pulsing intensifying, until the entire structure glowed with blue-white energy. Throughout the station, comm systems activated spontaneously, screens flickered to life, displaying streams of data encoded harmonics, converted to visual patterns that any sentient being could recognize as language. Vin watched in awe as the dragonling's song flowed through the station systems and outward, riding the network of relay beacons that connected Cheris to the Galactic Council's communication grid. They were broadcasting their history, their culture, their sentience to every corner of civilized space. The door behind him burst open. Security personnel flooded in, followed by the corporate representatives and the station administrator. Their shouts died as they beheld the scene before them, the dragonlings in formation, the array pulsing with their song, the data streams connecting to countless worlds. "Stop them!" the corporate woman demanded. "They're interfering with critical systems." The security chief hesitated, hand on his weapon. "Ma'am, I'm receiving priority communications from council headquarters. They're issuing an immediate protection order for these creatures." "Impossible!" The corporate representative's face contorted with rage. "The processing hasn't even..." "The evidence has been received and verified," came a new voice. A holographic projection appeared above the array, a council justice, her expression stern. "The beings known as Draconius Minimus are hereby classified as fully sentient under council law, with all attendant rights and protections. Any attempts to interfere with their liberty will be prosecuted under the Sentient Rights Charter." The Dragonling's song gradually diminished, their bodies relaxing as they completed their broadcast. The leader turned to Vin, its multifaceted eyes gleaming with what might have been gratitude. "The song has been heard," it trilled. The memory thread continues. In the days that followed, Kara Station became the focal point of a media frenzy. The Dragonling's broadcast had reached millions of screens across the galaxy, creating a viral sensation and sparking renewed debate about sentient rights. Petitions demanded stronger protection for unclassified species. Corporate stock prices fluctuated wildly as investors reconsidered the ethical implications of xenobiological research. For Vin, it was both gratifying and exhausting. Council representatives arrived to formalize the Dragonling's protected status. Journalists sought interviews. Even his handler at the Sentient Rights Division sent congratulations and a subtle warning that he'd made powerful enemies. Through it all, the Dragonlings remained under his care, their trust in him growing daily. They shared more of their song, teaching him harmonics that his compensator struggled to translate, concepts beyond human language perspectives that spanned millennia rather than decades. But they were growing restless. Vin could see it in their movements, hear it in the undertones of their communications. They needed more than his modified quarters could provide. They needed their home. "Where is your sanctuary?" he asked the leader one evening as they watched the stars through his viewport. "Your kind must have a place of safety." The leader's wing membranes rippled with complex patterns. "The sacred place is hidden from those who would exploit it. Our ancestors encoded its location in our very being, revealed only when the time is right." As if responding to these words, the patterns on the leader's wings shifted, forming a recognizable stellar configuration. The other Dragonlings extended their wings as well, each displaying a different segment of what Vin realized was a star chart. "You know the way?" he asked, incredulous. "We have always known," came the response. "But we needed one who would see us as guardians, not specimens, to complete our journey." Understanding dawned on Vin. "You need me to take you there." "The others still hunt our kind. We cannot travel alone without risk of capture." Vin nodded slowly. His mission on Karis was complete, but this felt like the purpose he'd been seeking since Vega. A chance not just to document, but to actively protect. "I'll need a ship," he said, already calculating requirements. "And we'll have to move quickly before your corporate admirers find a legal loophole." The council representatives, grateful for his role in identifying a new sentient species, proved surprisingly accommodating. They authorized the use of a research vessel ostensibly for continued observation in a natural habitat. They even expedited the refitting of its environmental systems to suit the Dragonling's needs. The corporate interests lodged formal protests, of course, but public opinion was firmly against them. The image of 8 young Dragonlings singing their heritage to the galaxy had captured the collective imagination. For now, at least, the letter of the law would be respected. On the day of their departure, Vin stood on Karis's observation deck, watching the sleek vessel that would be their home for the journey ahead. The Dragonlings were already aboard, settling into the modified cargo bay that now resembled a miniature version of their natural environment. "Quite the adventure you're embarking on," remarked a voice behind him. It was the station administrator, looking somewhat more relaxed now that the media spotlight had moved on. "Someone needs to ensure they reach sanctuary," Vin replied. "And after that?" The administrator raised an eyebrow. "Back to retirement." Vin considered the question, gazing at the stars beyond the station's shields. For the first time since Vega, the thought of returning to his solitary existence held no appeal. "I think there are more songs out there waiting to be heard," he said finally. "More guardians needing protection." "Well, good luck to you, Major." The administrator extended a hand. For what it's worth, you did the right thing. Reminded some of us why the charter exists in the first place. Vin accepted the handshake, then turned to board his ship. Dr. Solaris's data crystal pulsed gently in his pocket, synchronized now with the Dragonling's wing patterns. It would serve as both navigation guide and translation interface for the journey ahead. The coordinates led them deep into an uncharted sector, far from established trade routes. 3 weeks of careful navigation brought them to a small moon, orbiting a gas giant unremarkable at first glance. But Vin's sensors detected unusual energy signatures emanating from its surface. As they entered orbit, the Dragonlings grew increasingly animated, their wing patterns flashing with excitement. They gathered at the viewports, trilling to each other in complex harmonics that spoke of homecoming. "This is the place," the leader confirmed. "The sanctuary of our ancestors." Vin guided the ship toward the coordinates, indicated by the combined wing patterns of all 8 Dragonlings. They landed in a valley surrounded by weathered stone structures, geometric forms that appeared less built than grown, as if the rock itself had been coaxed into these shapes by some ancient technology. The moment the hatch opened, the Dragonlings surged forward, eager to feel real ground beneath them. Vin followed more cautiously, his military training making him wary of unknown environments. His concerns proved unnecessary. As the Dragonlings' feet touched the moon's surface, the dormant structures around them began to awaken. Lights flickered along their stone surfaces patterns, matching those on the Dragonlings' wings. The ground trembled slightly, and a series of low harmonic tones emanated from the structures themselves, a response to the Dragonlings' presence. "What is this place?" Vin asked his compensator, translating his words. The leader turned to him, its multifaceted eyes reflecting the glowing patterns. "The Terran ruins, where our ancestors first met humans long ago, before the others came." "Humans here." Vin surveyed the alien architecture with new eyes. "These aren't human constructions. Not made by human hands, no, but made for human minds to comprehend. Our ancestors were the bridge between species, their song, the universal translator. They helped the first explorers understand the ancient builders' knowledge." The implications staggered Vin. If true, it would rewrite humanity's understanding of its early interstellar history. What happened to them, the ancient builders? They ascended beyond physical form, left their knowledge encoded in structures like these, maintained by guardian species like ours. The leader's wing membranes rippled with blue light. "Until the others discovered the value of our song and sought to control it." Understanding dawned on Vin. "That's why your kind went into hiding, to protect the knowledge from being exploited." "Yes, and to preserve our purpose, to guard the harmony between species, to maintain the balance of knowledge." Another structure activated as they spoke, a tall spire whose surface bloomed with intricate patterns. The other Dragonlings had gathered around it, their wings extended to catch the soft light emanating from the stone. "What happens now?" Vin asked. "Now we take flight," the leader replied. "The sanctuary recognizes us. It will teach us the full song, prepare us for our role as guardians." As if in demonstration, the leader extended its wings fully. For the first time, Vin saw how the delicate membranes caught the air as the creature leapt upward, soaring into the moon's light gravity with graceful ease. The others followed, their bodies transformed by flight, no longer the huddled captives he had rescued, but majestic beings claiming their heritage. They circled above him, harmonizing in a complex melody that made the very air vibrate. The structures responded, their lights pulsing in rhythm with the song. It was a communion between the Dragonlings and their ancestral home, a reawakening of purpose. Watching them, Vin felt a peace settle over him deeper than anything he'd known since before Vega. The copper-sweet scent that had haunted his nightmares for so long was replaced by the clean mineral tang of the sanctuary moon. The weight of guilt lightened as he witnessed these beings reclaim their destiny. He had not failed this time. Days stretched into weeks as Vin documented the Dragonlings' transformation. They grew stronger, their wingspans increasing, their harmonics becoming more complex as they absorbed knowledge from the ancient structures. They invited him to record their song, to share what could be shared with the council, and add to Dr. Solaris's research. But eventually, the time came to make a decision. The research vessel was due back in council space. His official mission was complete. "Will you stay?" the leader asked, as they stood on a high plateau, watching the dual sunset of the gas giant and its distant star. "There is much more to learn, much more to guard." Vin considered the offer, tempted by the peace he'd found here. But the galaxy was vast, filled with other beings, who might need protection, other songs waiting to be heard. "I should return," he said finally. "Share what I've learned. Perhaps find others like you who need sanctuary." The leader's wing patterns shifted to a deep, contemplative blue. "You have become a guardian yourself in your way." "Guardian of the Guardians." Vin smiled slightly. "I suppose there are worse titles." "Take this." The leader extended a wing, and a small scale detached itself, floating to Vin's outstretched hand. It pulsed, with the same blue light as Dr. Solaris's data crystal. "It will help you find others of our kind, and it will lead you back to us, should you wish to return." Vin closed his fingers gently around the scale, feeling its resonance, with something deep within himself. "I will return," he promised, "and I'll make sure your sanctuary remains protected." As he prepared his ship for departure, Vin took one last look at the ancient structures and the dragonlings soaring between them. Their song echoed in his mind, a promise of harmony in a discordant galaxy. For the first time since Vega, he looked to the stars, not with dread of what he might find, but with hope for what he might protect. The endless song continued, and now, in his own way, he was part of it.